My name is Muhammad Dinie Ajwad bin Muhammad SABRI and my metric numbers is 275334. Our title is explain how neoclassical economists extended the economic analysis by discussing on imperfect competition, Edward Hastings Chamberlain and Joan Robinson, and monetary economics John GUSTAV, KNUT, WICKSELL, Irving Fisher, chapter 16 and 17. Introduction. There were no 5 major questions at neoclassical school. However, when compared to earlier classical and marginalist, the neoclassical school has 3 extensions of economic analysis. In determining market prices for goods, services, and resources, neoclassical economists emphasize both demand and supply. Classical economists emphasize supply alone, while marginalists emphasize only demand. Value theory. Several neoclassical economists were far more interested in the concept of money in the economy than the earlier marginalists, monetary economists. Marginal analysis was extended by neoclassical economists to market structures apart from pure competition, pure monopoly and duopoly, imperfect competition. Our focus in this assignment is to explain how neoclassical economists extended the economic analysis by discussing on first, monetary economics by John GUSTAV, KNUT, WICKSELL, and Irving Fisher, and second, imperfect competition by Edward Hastings Chamberlain and Joan Robinson. The neoclassical school. There is no different school of monetary economics, though some contemporary economists are referred to as monetarists, and some economic schools place a greater emphasis on monetary phenomena than others. Added as outcome, we can see in the time scale of economic ideas that a wide arrow leads from the neoclassical school to monetary economics and then back to the neoclassical school. WICKSELL and Fisher made a twofold contribution to economics. They explored an area that had been neglected but was growing in importance and therefore required emphasis. They helped integrate monetary analysis into general economic theory. Money was destined to become more important in economic theory as banking, credit, and economic fluctuation grew, as did the increasingly important monetary policies of central banks and governments. As previously stated, monetary economics of the neoclassical school differed significantly from non-monetarists of the same school, since monetary theory had to deal with aggregative analysis such like total demand, total money supply, total saving, as well as total investment. John GUSTAV, KNUT, WICKSELL, 1851 until 1926. John GUSTAV, KNUT, WICKSELL was born in Stockholm, Sweden. WICKSELL's interest in social problems and reform led him to a study of economics. His memorable experience in the study of economic theory was his discovery in a Berlin bookshop of von Bauer's book on capital theory soon after its publication in 1888. This book had a profound influence on his own economic thinking. WICKSELL made numerous significant contributions to economics. These advancements include: first, an examination of the role of interest rate in achieving an equilibrium price level or generating cumulative inflationary or deflationary movement. Second, recognition of the government and the central bank's potential contribution to price stability. And third, an early statement of the saving investment approach to macroeconomic equilibrium. WICKSELL was established as the father of the so-called Stockholm School of Economics by this final contribution. Furthermore, his work became a source of Keynesian economics. Keynes himself praised WICKSELL as an important precursor of his own ideas. WICKSELL's overall aim was to integrate monetary theory, business cycle theory, public finance, and price theory into a single system. Price level. Monetary theory turns on one main question: why do prices collectively rise or fall? WICKSELL turned to an analysis of interest rate. He distinguished between the normal or natural rate of interest and the bank rate. The normal or natural rate of interest, it is determined by the supply and demand for uninvested real capital. Capital is supplied by those who postpone consuming a portion of their income and thus accumulate wealth. The demand for capital is determined by the profit that can be made from its use, also known as marginal productivity. Banks complicate matters because, unlike private individuals, they are not limited in their lending to their own fund or even fund placed at their disposal by savers. Since banks create credit, they can make loans at very low interest rates. On the other hand, they are not required to lend out all of the funds placed at their disposal by savers. As a result, the bank rate of interest may be less than or greater than the normal or natural rate of interest. Price level will change in either two cases. Bank rate lower than natural rate. If banks lend money at materially lower rates than the normal or natural rate as defined in the previous quotation, saving will be discouraged and the demand for the consumption goods and service will rise. Simultaneously, entrepreneurs will seek more capital investment because of the greater net profits to be realized as the cost of borrowing money falls. As investment increases, more income accrues to workers, landowners, the owners of raw materials, and so forth. The prices of consumption goods therefore begin to rise. Juxtaposed with this increased demand for both consumption and investment goods, however, is an unchanged or even diminished supply of goods as saving diminish, assuming that we start at a position of full employment. Anticipation of price increase will cause the price to rise even more. Equilibrium is disturbed and a cumulative upward price movement begins. The fundamental cause is a bank or market rate of interest below the normal or natural rate that would bring into balance real saving and real investment at constant prices. Prices will rise without limit so long as the bank rate of interest is less than the natural rate. Bank rate greater than natural rate. Conversely, if the bank rate of interest is above the natural or normal rate, price will fall. The reason? Saving will increase and investment spending will decline. The decline in investment spending will reduce national income, which in turn will cause the prices of consumer goods to decline. With the prices of both capital and consumer goods falling, the general price level will obviously decline. That is, deflation will occur. Expecting further price declines, buyers will reduce their present expenditures even further, thus aggravating the deflation. Implication for public policy. WICKSELL's interest rate analysis, combined with his proclivity for reform, led him to emphasize the role of the government and the central bank in promoting economic stability. The primary cause of cyclical fluctuations, he claims, is that technological and commercial progress has not kept pace with the increase in needs, particularly those of an expanding population. People try to take advantage of rising demand by increasing investment, but it takes time to increase output volume through new discoveries, invention, and other improvement. A boom results from the rush to convert large amounts of liquid capital into fixed capital. However, if the technological advancements are already in place and no new ones promise a profit greater than the margin of risk, depression occurs. WICKSELL did not go into great detail about the underlying causes of business fluctuations. Instead, he concentrated his efforts on the monetary causes that we previously discussed. To eliminate this latter cause, he advocated for banks to establish a rate of interest that neither raises nor lowers commodity prices. That is, a rate of interest at which the bank rate of interest simply equals the normal or natural rate of interest. Remember that if money did not exist and all lending was in the form of capital goods, supply and demand would determine the interest rate. However, the natural rate of interest is not constant. WICKSELL was concerned that rising gold production and stockpiles would inflate currency, causing interest rate to fall and price to rise. As a result, free coinage of gold should be suspended and the world should transition to a worldwide paper standard. Forced saving. WICKSELL examined the theory of forced saving when discussing aggregate saving and investment. Bentham presented this doctrine dubbed forced frugality in his Manual of Political Economy, which was written in 1804 but published in 1843. Bentham referred to taxes and paper money as forced frugality when discussing the role of government in increasing capital. He had stated that printing paper money is a form of indirect taxation because it acts as an income tax on those with fixed incomes. John Stuart Mill on Profit and Interest in his essay on some unsettled question of political economy, written in 1829 or 1830, had stated that if bankers depreciate the currency, it operates to a certain extent as a forced accumulation. The higher product price tax away some of the real income of consumers. Leon Walras clearly had stated the theory of forced saving in 1879, probably inspiring WICKSELL and through him all the later German authors who deal with the subject. WICKSELL hypothesized a case in which a new enterprise was financed through a bank loan, poor credit creation without a corresponding accumulation of real capital. Assuming full employment at the outset, more land and labor would be employed in producing capital goods than if there were no credit creation to finance a new enterprise, leaving less credit available for turning out consumer goods. The demand for articles of consumption would increase rather than diminish, because entrepreneurs would bid up the prices of land and labor as they expanded investment. With the resulting rise in prices, entrepreneurs would acquire fewer capital goods than they originally contemplated based on the size of the loans they negotiated. At the same time, consumption would be restricted as price rose. This enforced restriction would in fact constitute the real accumulation of capital that must be achieved if capital investment is to increase. The real saving which is necessary for the period of investment to be increased is in fact enforced at exactly the right moment on consumers as a whole. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is AMANINA binti SUHAIMI. As a second presenter, my matric number is 275506. I'm going to continue WICKSELL on imperfect competition. WICKSELL recognized the inadequacy of a purely competitive model in retail markets. WICKSELL wrote that retailers usually have a fixed circle of customers, and this enables them to have fixed rather than fluctuating price. Retail price do respond to changes in wholesale price. WICKSELL follow the lead of KNUT and others by indicating that the volume of sale is artificially restricted to the point that yields maximum profit. Fixed or overhead costs have no influence whatever in determining the most profitable monopoly price. Only variable costs are to be considered. Next, Irving Fisher. He is a Yale mathematician turned economist. He was one of the earliest American neoclassical economists. Born on 27 February in New York, he wrote several books on how to be healthy. He received about $1 million for his only commercially successful invention. Fisher theories consist of theory of interest, the quantity theory of money, and monetary policy. First, theory of interest. The rate of interest explains about how interest rates are determined. The theory of interest are revised and expanded version. The two factors interacting to establish the interest rate is impatient rate and investment opportunity rate. The meaning of impatient rate is the extent of the community willingness to obtain present consumption by giving up future consumption. The amount of future consumption is willing to trade off for present consumption depends on how impatient it is. For example, the less impatient, the more it is willing to save and invest. thereby gaining future consumption. Next, the more impatient, the less it is willing to give up present consumption to save in order to obtain goods in the future. The investment opportunity rate is determined by real factors such as quantity and quality of resources and the state of technology. Two extreme cases, there is devote resources to producing goods from present consumption alone. Next, use all of them to produce capital such that present consumption was zero but future consumption would be large. However, as society moves from the first extreme, all present consumption, to the latter one, no present consumption, it experienced diminishing marginal returns. According to Fisher, based on the principle of diminishing marginal returns, first, the more we invest and postpone our gratification, the lower the investment opportunity rate and the greater the impatient rate. Second, the more we spend and hasten our gratification, the lower the impatient rate and the greater the opportunity rate. Third, the less we save and invest, the lower is the relative value of present consumption, the highest is the marginal rate of return on investment. Fourth, the equilibrium interest rate will occur where the rate of return on investment and the rate is willing to trade off present for future consumption are equal. Lastly, at the equilibrium interest rate, the amount people wish to borrow will just match the amount people desire to lend. Next, the quantity theory of money. 5 determinants of purchasing power of money or its inverse, the price level. It consists the volume of currency in circulation, its velocity of circulation, the volume of bank deposit subject to check, its velocity and the volume of trade. Fisher equation of exchange. MV plus M prime V prime equal to PT. M, the quantity of currency, V is velocity of circulation, M prime is the quantity of demand deposit, V prime is the velocity of circulation, P is the average level of prices, T the quantity of goods and services transacted or sold. According to Fisher, price vary directly with the quantity of money and the velocity of circulation. Price vary inversely with the volume of trade. The volume of demand deposit tends to hold a fixed relation to M, the quantity of currency in circulation. That is, deposits are normally a relatively fixed, definite multiple of currency. There are two reasons. First, bank reserves are kept in fixed definite ratio to bank deposit. Second, individual, firm and corporation maintain fairly stable ratio between the currency and deposit balance. Next, cause and effect relationship between the quantity of currency and price level. The velocity of circulation and the volume of trade are constant. Both fluctuate over the business cycle, but they are always tend to return to an equilibrium level. The tendency towards stability in T also depends on full employment equilibrium. It is because with considerable unemployment, an increase in M might be very increased T instead of P. In the long run, the volume of trade also grows with change in the population efficiency of production. And in the short run, with fully employed economy, the quantity of currency in circulation normally determines the price level. What is the transmission mechanism through which increase or decrease in M cause changes in P? First, people desire to hold a specific quantity of cash balance in relationship to the expenditure. Second, the increase in the amount of cash in the economy disturbs this optimal ratio, causing individuals to readjust their cash to expenditure ratio by increasing expenditure. Direct link is between increased currency and price. An indirect link is Money creation would cause changes in the bank interest rate that would set off changes in saving and investment that would eventually cause the price level to change. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Siti BINTI NORDIN, number matrix 272172. So today I'm gonna talk about the monetary policy. The quantitative theory of money offers a way to stabilize the overpriced level, thereby to stabilize the economy. So this might be achieved by eating the ball with paper money, but Fisher took a view of the solution before the Great Depression of the 1930s. According to the Fisher's plan, we would first abandon gold coin and use only gold certificates. If the price index fell 1% below par, the weight of the gold dollar would be reduced by 1%. If a flood of gold poured into our circulation from domestic or foreign sources, redundant gold certificates would cause a price rise. Raising the price of gold would reverse the outflow and thereby restore the previous price level. Briefly, in the monetary policy discussion in Chapter 16, Fisher's solution was to require 100% reserve behind demand deposits, thereby divorcing the process of creating and destroying the money from the business bank assets up to 100% of the bank's checking deposits for currency or lend currency to bank on those assets as a security. So it would have been to be backed 100% by currency reserve. And he quoted that, though quite ready to change my opinion, I have at present a strong conviction that these two economic maladies, which may be called the debt disease and the dollar disease, are in the great booms and depressions more important causes than all others to put together. So, in this slide, there is a man called Ralph George Putri. He was a British Treasury official who found time to write many books about monetary economy. So his main concern was business fluctuations, which he attributed largely to the instability of credit. There might be other causes of fluctuations, he admitted, but they are minor and can be controlled by the monetary devices.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad SHAHRUL NAJMY bin REDZOAN and my matrix number is 269965. Today I'm gonna be continuing about the monetary theory of business cycle. Because of the inherent instability of credit working through the merchant to upset the rest of the economy in cumulative departure from an unstable equilibrium, if the bank increase the lending, that will ensure a release of cash and enlargement of the consumer's income and outlay on the consumption and investment goods. What does it mean by increase in the consumer's outlay? That means is increased demand for goods in general and traders finds the stock of finished product diminishing. The result further order the produces a further increase in productive activity, in consumers' income and outlay, and in demand a further depletion of stocks. Increased activity can be described as increase in demand, which where decreased activity means decrease in demand. Discretion monetary policy. Halter recommended several remedies for curbing the instability of credit and ensuring stability of economic activity, such as central bank open market operation, changes in the rediscount rate, and variation in the reserve requirement of commercial banks. Raising interest rate and restricting bank reserve can curb inflation because such policies can always be pushed to the point where they become effective. A deadlock is a rare occurrence, but unfortunately, in the 1930s, it came to plague the world and raised problems which threatened the fabric of civilization with destruction. 17. The way to avoid deadlock. PUTRI decided is to take proper action during the previous boom. After the reversal occur, the bank rate must be reduced rapidly to avoid a cumulative and vicious deflation. When we assume that the high bank rate has done its work, that means that it has successfully overcome the vicious circle expansion and started the vicious circle of deflation. If this transaction is delayed and spread over a longer interval, its power at any one time may be insufficient, and the vicious circle of deflation will go on gathering impetus till it becomes irresistible. PUTRI's concept of the merchant as the crucial figure in economic life may have been appropriate to England then as well, because England was then the leader in the world trade.
Hi, Assalamualaikum and very good day to everyone. My name is Putri ROZIRA binti MOHAMAD ROZNI. My metric number is 275646. So, today I will continue with chapter 7, which is the neoclassical school, the departure from pure competition. Theories of imperfect competition are well within the scope and tradition of marginal school and neoclassical school. For example, KNUT developed models of pure monopoly and duopoly as early as 1838, while Ajwad and WICKSELL analyzed situations in which demand curve faced by competitors were less than perfectly elastic. The interest of imperfect competition arises because of the gap in economic theory of pure models of competition and monopoly and was becoming increasingly untenable. This pure competition applied mostly in agriculture, but it has becoming less suitable to modern conditions than it had in earlier times. According to many economists, the neoclassical theory of pure competition had less direct applicability to modern industrial production and trade than to agriculture. This pure competition has been replaced by workable competition, which represents a compromise between pure competition and oligopoly. From this neoclassical theory, we understand that under monopolistic competition, the price are likely to be higher and the output lower than under pure competition, even in the absence of the power. In addition, under condition of monopolistic competition and monopsony, the factor of production do not receive return equivalent to the value of their marginal contribution. As you can see here, there are two important people in this imperfect competition, which is Edward Hastings Chamberlain and JOAN Robinson, which we will explain details about that later. So, the first person is Edward Hastings Chamberlain. He was born in La Cornell, Washington in 1899 and died in 1967. He received his undergraduate degree in University of Iowa. He also published a book named The Theory of Monopolistic Competition in 1933. This important book fused the previously separate theories of monopoly and competition, and it explained a range of market situations that are neither purely competition and totally monopolistic. Chamberlin also held that most market prices are actually determined by both monopolistic and competitive elements. Many economists say that pure competition results in larger output, more efficient production, and lower selling price than those that are occur under monopolistic competition. But this requires two qualifications, which is Chamberlin's conclusions are built in the unrealistic assumption that cost curves are the same in each situation. The pure competition would not necessarily provide the greatest volume of output and the lowest prices. The second one is contemporary economists note that a world of pure competition with all products being standardized would be a dull world indeed. Monopolistic competition provides positive benefits associated with a variety of products. Next is about Chamberlin's book, which is The Theory of Monopolistic Competition. In this book, it is stated that each demand curve slopes downward and therefore its marginal revenue curve must lie below the demand or average revenue curve. Under pure competition, where each firm is able to sell all of its product on the ongoing market price, the marginal revenue is equal to price, and the marginal revenue and demand curve are identical horizontal lines. For example, if a farmer can sell all bushels of wheat at $5 per bushel, every additional bushel sold adds $5 to total revenue. But the situation is quite different in market in which pure competition does not prevail. For example, if an entrepreneur can sell one pair of shoes per day at price $20, two pairs at $18 and three pairs at $16, in each case except the first, the marginal revenue is less than the price. When the marginal cost is below than the average cost is necessarily false. But when the marginal cost is greater than the average cost will necessarily rises. Therefore, the marginal cost curve cuts the average cost curve at the latter's lowest point. According to Chamberlin, only where a firm enjoys significant monopoly will its price exceed average cost in both short and long run. So, this is the example of monopolistic competition graph. Given that demand curve D and marginal curve MR, the monopolistic competitor produce quantity B at which MR is equal to MC, and which it earns an economic profit at LMNS. This economic profit attracts new entrants to the industry, resulting in a downward shift of the firm demand and marginal revenue curve to D' and MR'. In long-run equilibrium, the firm maximizes profit by producing quantity A, earns only a normal profit, which is P is equal to AC, produce less than competitive output, A rather than C, and charges of price R that exceed marginal cost and lowers average cost. The result is excess capacity and allocative inefficiently. Chamberlin's model indicates that monopolistic competitive firms offer differentiated products, charges price that exceed their marginal cost, and operative at levels of output which their average costs are higher than minimum.
Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. Okay, next I want to talk about the JOAN Robinson 93 until 1983. JOAN Robinson. JOAN Robinson is a professor of economics at Cambridge University and she was a student of Alfred Marshall. Her book, The Economics of Imperfect Competition, was published a few months after Chamberlin and covered substantially the same ground. Robinson expanded her activities and made important contributions in Keynesian and post-Keynesian economics, economic development, and international trade. Robinson also offered a significant critique of Marxist economics, thus her position was that of a friendly detractor. Robinson was known in her later years as a critic of conventional economics, and her overall works are difficult to fit within any particular school of thought. Okay, next, what is monopsony? Monopsony is a situation in which there is either a single buyer in a market or a group of buyers acting as one. Product market monopsony. When there are many buyers of a commodity, their aggregate demand curve slopes downward and to the right because it is based on marginal utility. The more units of a good person acquire, the lower its marginal utility and the less he or she offers for an additional unit. If there is only a single buyer, or if all the buyers form an agreement to act together, we can assume that the market demand curve remains unaltered. We can also assume that the supply curve remains unchanged because it indicates how much all the sellers together will offer at each price. The supply price is based on the cost of producing each quantity, and this cost does not change in the present monopsony. Okay, next, Robinson states two generalizations, which is number one, under pure competition, and number two, under monopsony. Number one, under pure competition, the buyer will purchase successive unit of goods at any one time up to the point where the price is equal to marginal utility. Number two is monopsony. The buyer will regulate the purchase in such a way that the marginal cost to him as BINTI from the marginal cost of production, which is equal to marginal utility. These important provisions are listed in Table 71. Monopsony in a product market hypothetical data. We have the 5 data, which is number 1, unit price, total cost, marginal cost, and finally marginal utility. Next, we want to see about the pure competition among buyers. Number 1, suppose the market price of some hypothetical product X is $4. Number 2, no single buyer can influence the price regardless of the amount that he purchased. Number 3, we assume that the marginal utility data in column 5 is for a particular consumer who buy only this good. At any one time, ownership of the first unit of the product provide the consumer $7 of marginal utility. At second unit provide $6 of marginal utility to him. The third unit $5, the fourth unit $4, and so forth. At the market price of $4, the consumer will buy 4 units of the product. That is, he will buy units of the product up to the point where the price $4 from column 2 is equal to marginal utility, which is $4 from column 5. From the previous slide, we can conclude that under nominal condition of an upward sloping product supply curve, the monopolist will purchase fewer units of a product, which is number 3, than would competitive buyers, number 4, and will pay a lower than competitive price, which is $3 as opposed to $4. Next, the monopolist can control the product price by adjusting the quantity of purchase, much like a monopolistic seller can control the same price by adjusting the level of output. Okay, next, Robinson also conclude that in the presence of a perfectly elastic supply curve, that is where marginal cost and average cost of production are equal. The supply price will be constant and the quantity purchased under monopoly will be the same as under pure competition. And finally, if an industry is working under diminishing supply price, the marginal cost to the monopolist will be less than the price of the commodity, and he or she will buy more of the product than would pure competitor. Okay, next, under John Robinson, we want to see about the exploitation under monopolistic competition. Number 1, sale of an additional unit of output does not add the full amount of the product price to marginal revenue. And number 2, marginal revenue that firm take in when it hire an additional worker and sell the resulting greater output will be less than the extra output. Number 3, firm will sell all units at the lower price even though it could have sold at a higher price had it not hired the extra worker. Okay, next, remedies for exploitation. Okay, trade union should impose a minimum wage. And then supply of labor become perfectly elastic at the imposed wage rate and the marginal wage cost of labor identical with the average wage cost. The net supply curve would be a horizontal line emanating from the vertical axis. The wage would equal the marginal revenue product, and exploitation for monopoly will disappear. And then economists have identified monopoly power in several real-world labor markets. Last, it is about the criticism. The bigger Robinson definition of exploitation applies only to pure competition in the sale of the product. It is impossible under other market conditions for all factors to get the value of their marginal product. According to Robinson, all the factors are exploited. An employer could avoid the charge of exploitation only by going into bankruptcy. Robinson believed that while it was theoretically possible to construct the system of equations necessary to determine the profit maximizing price, and there were a number of obstacles to practical implementation. She also argued that the relevant data were not readily available and that computational limitation would make it difficult to implement the right policy in a timely manner. That's all from me. Thank you.